Mimma.
Hi, Lou.
How are you
doing?
How
are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm very well, thank you.
I want to ask you about the Gucci show because there's a big change at Gucci, and you're someone who knows Gucci and the Gucci group very well because you worked there for a very long time. And obviously it's such a period of change because there's a new designer there, Alessandro Michele, and this was kind of his first proper men's show because obviously the season before he had designed it, but he was only announced as creative director the day after the show, whereas this season, it was all under his own name, and he'd already shown some women's wear under his own name. Tell me first, what were your first reactions to the show?
Well, I absolutely adored it, and I must say that I am part of those people that are a total fan. And I'm a total fan of what he's doing because I think that notwithstanding the strategy behind it that comes from the genius of Marco Bizzarri, I think Alessandro Michele is that. So what I feel is there's a total honesty and I think he's very genuine in what he does. He's not trying hard. I think he is. And I think that's amazing, and it came out in his first show that apparently took him 1 week to put together. It's as if, the guy's been 10 or 15 years under someone, and then it's as if he had kept his voice, hidden for a while, and then suddenly, boom, it comes out all of a sudden, and that's the result. And if that's the result, I applaud it. I think it's genius, and I also love the fact that people are like, the Italian press was a little bit shocked by that, and it's costumey, and who's dressing like that. And then in 6 months, when they'll see the result, they will all say, oh, we love it. We always knew it was amazing, because this is what the world is today, and it's giving the world what the world needs.
Mm. It's interesting also you would say this is what the world needs, because I think one thing that, we don't often talk about sort of business too much in the studio, but I think it's interesting in this case because Gucci hasn't particularly been performing well, share prices are down, sales are down, and they're such a huge part of the group's sort of total profit. So it's not a time of trouble for Gucci, but it definitely isn't a turning point, a time of change. And do you think that this is going to be able to sort of pull those sales back up?
Absolutely. I think, because don't forget that when a group which is quoted goes down like 5%, it's like a disaster, but people forget that 5% is minus a few million or a few billion. So Gucci is still selling stuff. But Alessandro Michele's appointment has made Gucci the brand to talk about, okay? It's never been, ever since Tom Ford, which is 15 years ago now, ever been that time, Gucci hasn't been talked about that much and with such an enthusiasm and such a fresh take. So this will increase sales in every category. I mean, for the first time in 5 years that I haven't worked with them anymore, I was in T5 the other day and I went into the Gucci store. And I went into the Gucci store at the terminal to look at the bags, and it was nothing that I saw on Alessandro Michele catwalk. But after I'm like, ooh, that's a really cool bag. And that's the effect that will have, because it's all about making the brand cool again and relevant and modern. And you can criticize him as much as you want, but what he's doing is very modern. And I think it's absolutely genius. I absolutely love it. I'm so enthusiastic.
It's interesting also, I think it's very smart that you talk about fashion relevance, because I think there can be things where brands have a big business relevance, but they lose the fashion relevance. They're not seen as someone who's pushing the boundaries or even kind of involved in the fashion conversation. And I think it's hard to see what damage that does to a brand until you kind of observe the long term. We are kind of able to do that with Gucci now. You mentioned kind of no one talks about it in a fashion context as much after Tom Ford, and we've seen the effect that has had, albeit slowly, but I think it does have an effect. Do you think that brands do always have to stay part of sort of the fashion conversation?
Yes, I do, and I think it's essential. But, let me take it from here. I think this is very interesting time for fashion because we had 3 major rebirths, starting from Hedi at Saint Laurent, which is 2 years, and then Nicolas at Louis Vuitton, and now Alessandro at Gucci. I mean, these are the 3, 2 especially big brands, but we're talking about the 2 big groups that are showing us that they have the courage and the power to make it relevant again. And we're talking fashion, and fashion for a few years has been so boring and so old-fashioned in a way, where people didn't know exactly what was changing. They didn't understand the language they should speak. And suddenly you have these three geniuses that understood that the street and the people and the customer was dictating what they wanted, that they're giving it to us in an amazing, glamorous, beautiful, luxurious way. Well, this is what fashion should be for me. This is what fashion is all about. And I am convinced that as Miuccia Prada has influenced fashion for the past 20 years, and she hasn't stopped, and she still does. Now I think these three people that I mentioned are influencing the next 3, 4, 5 years. In the street, on the catwalks, in the business.
It's interesting to talk about rebranding. You kind of hinted at it there because it's something I wrote about in my review for Show Studio, and I did draw comparisons between Eddie Slimane and what he's been doing in Alessandro Michele, and I think it is interesting. I wrote about this idea of kind of revolutionizing a brand seems to be the only way to
I thought it was a very clever review you gave to Gucci. It was very, very smart.
And do you think that is the case from a business perspective, that you can't sort of, go in and keep things ticking over? Do you think that to really kind of make a brand work, we need that kind of sense of revolution? I think you're also seeing it with JW Anderson at Loewe.
Absolutely. But I mean, if I had, I didn't mention him, but yes, I agree. But if I had the magic stick, I would be a gazillionaire, and I'm not. But I do believe that it's at least something that nobody can deny we need. Because without what Marco Bizzarri had by appointing Alessandro Michele was courage. And that's why I applaud, because people sometimes they're too safe, and then nothing really changes, and then it's a little bit, we don't know exactly what, but something is missing. And here, everybody's like, Michele who? Alessandro who? They didn't know what the name was, what the surname was, and then this guy appeared, and suddenly it's like, whoa, everybody's noticing. And that's communication. That's the most genuine, honest, spontaneous communication. You don't even need to try, and he understands the street, which I don't mean streetwear by that. I mean the street. I mean the power of the people. He understands that. He even did a campaign in the street, which I thought was the best campaign that I've seen in the past year or so. I'm very enthusiastic. But I would like to say something, Lou, because you pointed out the non-diversity in his show. And it's in one hand, I totally agree with you, and I hear what you mean. On the other hand, I would like to say that you live in London, and London is a totally diverse city, and you cannot miss it, okay? Well, Italy, and especially Rome, it's not that. So, unfortunately, the ethnically different person, I don't know how to call them now, to be politically correct, are not your friends. They are your maids. They are, they're not people you hang out with, unfortunately. And so it's not in their culture. So I don't think he only casted white people because he's against non-white people. That's because it's the country he lives in. And I'm not protecting it. It's wrong. But I lived in Rome for 9 years, and I can tell you, I'm Swiss, and everybody thinks we're provincial. Well, we're much less provincial because we grow up with people of every color and race and nationality and language. That doesn't happen in Rome. I think you're right. It's a sort of an excuse I gave him. I don't think it's correct, but it's certainly not racist. Certainly.
No, I don't think it is, but I think that's in a way is what is more worrying. It's when designers, there's no malice or it's not deliberate. They just almost like they haven't noticed. And I think that's the way they kind of sleepwalk into it. And I think that's what, it's the lack of consideration. It's the fact that people aren't paying attention.
But I think that's why it's very good that people like you point it out, because they are going to read and they're going to say, oh my God, she's so right, and you said it right. You said, that wasn't modern, that was the only thing not modern. And so, because even if he doesn't experience it
in Italy, those clothes, they need to sell to a global fashion audience, and a global fashion audience encompasses people of all different ethnicities. And I think that's so important. But I think it's right. I think the word modern that you use is correct elsewhere in all other facets of that collection.
Yeah, but think about what Frida did. She had hired Rihanna, John Legend, what's her name, the other one? Of course, I have a brain freeze now that I shouldn't. But anyway, these, colors, whatever called them, can I say black, music artists. And that's where they feel natural because, of course, music comes from there. They haven't understood yet that it's also gorgeous-looking models that can be Asian, Indian, African American, whatever. But it's certainly important for you and for us to discuss this. But it's not, a willingness not to do it. It's just a non-cultural thing. That's it.
Mm. But otherwise, do you think that Gucci is on the right track? Otherwise, though, you think that there's exciting things to come?
Absolutely, as Yves Saint Laurent was, and you can testify that I was always a pro. I mean, I was always pro head in what it was doing, and the figures are proving it. I think Gucci is the next big success. Yes, like Louis Vuitton. Yes, and Loewe and whatever. New, fresh, renewed, courageous. That's what I believe is the future of fashion. Yes.
Thank you.
And also disruptive. People saying, what? Men in blouses? Well, yes, take that. I'm very happy to see it.
Me too. Thank you.
You're welcome, Lou. Talk to you soon.